Alexander Havar said this is the virtue of personal excellence. And I learned that virtue in boxing. So in boxing, I believe in order to have that personal excellence, you need daily habits, daily rituals, and daily routines.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. I am fulfilling my promise to you today by bringing Héctor Colón on the show. Hector, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mike. Happy to be with you here today.
Yeah, so this is going to be a good one. Let me start by telling you a little bit about Hector. So Hector is the president and CEO of Lutheran Social Services of Wisconsin and Upper Michigan. Prior to that, Hector was the executive director of Health and Human Services for Milwaukee County. So we've got a local person on the podcast today. He is also a board member at USA Boxing and the author of a wonderful book about his personal path called My Journey from Boxing Ring to Boardroom, 5 Essential Virtues for Life and Leadership. You can see the book behind me and behind him as well. So we'll be talking a lot about the book as well. Finally, Hector is a keynote speaker who describes himself as a servant CEO, and you can learn all about him at Héctor Colón, HectorColonMke.com. Finally, he was named a 2021 Notable Minority Leader and the 2019 Nonprofit Executive of the Year by BizTimes Media. So that's a very, very short, distilled bio about this incredible man that we're going to learn about today. So Hector, here's how we get started here. I ask a question. It is, how did it happen for you?
Yeah, so I'd say that a significant event in my life happened on one summer day in 1982 when I went outside to play baseball with some of the neighborhood kids. And one individual kid didn't want me or people with the color of my skin in the neighborhood and called me some racial and ethnic slurs and hit me in the face. And I came home with a bloody nose, and my father said, "What happened? ¿Qué te pasó?" And I told him what happened, and he told me that he wanted to take me to the gym so that I can learn how to defend myself. Here I go to the gym, intimidated, all these big guys, sweating, hitting the heavy bag. And my coach, Israel Acosta, who they called Shorty, who's a giant in my life, a giant in this community, he puts me in front of the mirror and started showing me a few boxing combinations. And he told my father, "Your son is a natural. He's going to become a champion." That really boosted my self-esteem. He ended up being right. I became a 7-time national champion, competing all over the world with the United States national boxing team. And in 1992, I was favored to go to the Olympics. But I lost to a guy named Jesse Brasino, who robbed me of my dreams. And the biggest part of that story is that here I was 19. I was already looking past the Olympic trials, and at that gold medal, I was thinking about that multi-million-dollar contract. And for the most important opportunity in my life, I was not focused, mind, body, and spirit, and I lost. And I was devastated. A few months later, as I was searching, I wasn't hearing from the big time promoters about the $1 million contract. I was searching and I was hurting. On December 27, 1992, I bought my first Bible. And on that day, I gave my life to Christ. I ended up fighting the guy that robbed me of my dreams 6 months after that. And this time I knocked him out in the first round for the U.S. Championship. That fight was on cable television. I was on the inside cover of Sports Illustrated, front cover of USA Boxing magazine. The promoters came back, but I put it through a year of prayer and discernment, and it was the hardest decision I ever made in my life. Something that I worked so hard for was literally at the tip of my finger, and I felt a strong calling away. But the beautiful part about my story, and it's reflected in the book, is what I learned in the sport of boxing that helped me in life and leadership. That same dedication, determination, and discipline. It took me to be a champion boxer is the same dedication, determination, and discipline that I apply into my life, striving for excellence in everything that I do, whether it be as a husband, as a father, or as a CEO. And I learned 5 essential virtues as well. And they are magnanimity, which is about striving for greatness, humility, at its core, it's about serving others, courage, which is about facing your fears, perseverance, which is not about not giving up, and temperance, which is about self-control and restraint.
So let me break some of that down, if you don't mind. This day that your father took you to the gym, I think you said you were 8 years old. Is that right?
9 years old.
9 years old, and this trainer, Shorty, looked at you and took you through a little workout or something, and then said, I told your dad, I think your son's a natural or something. So did that surprise you? Like, what did you feel like if you remember, Hector? Because when you go into a gym for the first time doing something new, you a lot of times you don't feel very good about it. You feel like especially if other people are around, you're like, oh, look at that guy or look at that person. And do you remember what you felt about your experience then?
Yeah, I remember a couple feelings. One, first feeling ashamed that my nose was bloodied by this kid in the neighborhood and I didn't do anything back.
Right.
So that natural reaction came to mind. But then I felt this, this boost of my self-esteem, because here's a guy that saw some natural talent in me. I never threw any punches like that before, and he just had this overwhelming belief in me. And that carried on throughout my career in boxing with him. He had this amazing belief in me, no matter what weight I was fighting or who I was fighting. He knew that I had the ability to be the champion.
And 7-time national champion, what does that mean for people who don't know what that means? Is that 7 years in a row, or 7 years of being national champion, or what is it?
7 different weight classes.
Weight classes. Okay.
Yep. So my last championship title that I won was at 147 as a welterweight, and that was in 1993. So I won the championship title in various weight divisions over my time in boxing.
Okay, and so that was essentially from the time you were 9 till you were 19 or so.
And 20.
20, okay. And you, well, I guess before I ask that question, I'm going to ask you about how school was for you from the time you got into boxing until you were, just almost an Olympian and almost a pro.
Yeah.
As well, because you could have become pro even though you lost that Olympic trial bout.
Right.
How was school for you? Were you interested in it? Were you kind of just all in on boxing? What were you feeling?
Yeah. So, in grade school, I would say I was okay. And then when I got to middle school, I became an honor roll student. I was on the gifted and talented. I worked really hard. When I became in high school, I didn't work as hard. First, I did okay my freshman year, my sophomore year, and whenever I wanted, I would get a 3-point. So sometimes, there was a little bit of competition, or if I had a desire to get a 3-point, I would get it. But I always didn't have that deep desire. My deep desire was to become the champion in boxing, was to become a world champion and turn professional and really focus on that. So my focus was on that, training, reviewing tapes of some of the greatest, eating well. That was my focus. Then obviously later, when I went to college, it was a whole different story. I immersed myself in that same dedication, determination took me to be a boxer. I applied that into my education and graduated with honors. 3.83 for my master's degree, took things really seriously later on in life.
And when you lost to Jesse the first time, what was Shorty and what was your dad and what were your parents saying to you? What were your friends saying to you?
Yeah, so it was a very difficult moment. Obviously, my coach was like, "Don't worry, champ. We'll do this the next time." And he wanted me to fight to wait for the next Olympics, which would have been 4 years later. And he even talked about maybe going to Puerto Rico and applying there and seeing if I can make the Olympic team for Puerto Rico. So he was very optimistic. My father was in Puerto Rico. So my mother and father got a divorce when I was 12. So I really didn't have too much contact with him back then. My mother, was supportive, obviously, and said, hang in there. My friends were as well, but it was different. I did get a lot of less attention, certainly from the media, from some people that I wouldn't call close friends, but were in my group. So that did cause some pain and just some discomfort, like it felt a little empty during that time.
Sure.
And that's why I was searching.
And you stayed in the gym training for at least another 6 months because you had this rematch with this fellow again. I think that was the time frame you said.
Yep.
And during that 6-month period, had you begun searching already, or were you still like 100% focused on, taking back what was robbed of you by this young man?
I was searching, and I was getting more and more involved with the church and in Bible studies and learning more about Scripture. But I also gave up everything else. I gave up school. I gave up work. So my focus was on getting closer to God and boxing. And I did. When I entered the ring with Jesse Bracino this time, I was focused mind, body, and spirit. And there was nothing that he could do to take away that championship title that year. And if I would have operated that way in the Olympic trials, it is likely I would have been in the Olympics in 1992. But hindsight 2020, I think everything turned out the way it needed to be, and I'm very happy with my life.
So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that, because I was thinking to myself, well, if I were a 19-year-old, Olympic candidate, and I, was devastated by a loss, could I stay? Even if I was, of course, you'd be searching, right? Because you'd be like, what just happened? But could I stay focused on, coming back and fighting that same fighter again? Because it's intimidating, right? You lost, you kind of come back, and then. But I was also thinking about you used the term robbed, and I think I think to myself, well, did Jesse really rob you, or did you, rob yourself that first time by maybe not doing everything you could have and should have maybe to win?
Yeah, good thought. And I think it's a combination of both. I think in my case, truly, the outcome could have been differently if I would have been focused, mind, body, and spirit for the most important opportunity of my life. And there's that little pinch in the heart, even as I talk about this. But it's also a huge learning lesson that you got to be ready, when that big next opportunity comes up, and you have to be ready as a CEO every single day to bring forth your best, because the people you serve, your colleagues, the organization is counting on it. So I take that really seriously nowadays, and I think that was a very important lesson I learned as a result of that loss.
I like that the way you brought it to the CEO level, because at that level, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, but every day you're coming in and you really don't know who your opponent is going to be many days, because the opponent just comes out of nowhere. Could be
Oh, that's right.
could be someone on your team, could be someone that you're working for, a client, could be someone that's serving you as a supplier or something. It could be the media. It could be, you never know. You just never know, right? So you can't train for it very well.
This is where the bobbing and weaving,
Yeah.
rolling with the punches
Yeah.
come in play. But we don't have those cups anymore, so those low blows do hurt. But yeah, absolutely. It's like, when you're a CEO, different things come up. And, one virtue I think about is temperance, where you're in the sport of boxing, you learn temperance and self-control. You have to have it, otherwise you won't be successful. And that's a very important virtue as a CEO as well.
Right. And I want to get into each of those a little bit more, but since you just brought it up right then, and again, I'm relating it to boxing, but temperance in boxing is, and you tell me again, because I'm boxing now. I think I told you that when we were talking the first time, and I am not going to the Olympics. So I'm not going to challenge your pedigree. But one of the things that I'm learning is that, you get hit, you have an immediate desire to hit back as hard as you can. Go after someone as hard as you can. And the temperance part, if I'm understanding it right, is actually part of the discipline that's saying, hey, wait for your opportunity. Okay, you got hit. That's going to happen. If you respond right away, as aggressively as you can, they're probably waiting for that. Your opponent's probably waiting for that. You got to wait.
Absolutely dead right on. So temperance in boxing is that self-control. So when you get hit, you can't just retaliate and try to slug back. You have to stay composed and strategize and think about how you're going to try not to get hit the next time. Or
Right.
Before the fight, there's a lot of smash talking, and you can't allow that to get to your head. You got to try to be composed and try to take care of business in the middle of the ring. Or if somebody hits you with a low blow and the referee doesn't see it, you shouldn't retaliate with a low blow, because now the referee might see it and you could get disqualified.
Yeah.
So yeah, that temperance and self-control is key to being a successful boxer and champion.
So let's dig a little deeper into your search. You mentioned that that your parents divorced when you were 12, and your father moved back to Puerto Rico. You were, you had your coach, you had your boxing career, you were doing okay in school. When you applied yourself, yes. When you didn't, what else was going on in your life during that period leading up to this loss? And it could be a several year period that would have you thinking about these other things as you began your search.
Yeah, when my father left at 12 years old, it was devastating. So my father was a good father. He got me involved in boxing. He was the coach for my baseball team. We watched games together. So he was a huge part of my life. And I recall the night on one summer night when he said, we went into his car and he said, I'm leaving to Puerto Rico. And I was just devastated. I didn't understand. I didn't hear from him for a couple years, and heard from him rarely over those years while I was on that journey to the Olympics. So that was really hard part of my life to see my father gone. Then the other part was here my mother has a 7th grade education, working 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to support the family. And never did I see my mother complain. Not once did I see her complain. I'm 12 years old. My sister's 17. She's addicted to drugs, the onset of mental illness, working 3 jobs. And not only is she doing all this, but she's serving other homeless individuals and people with mental illness. And so I saw this huge sense of servant leadership through my mom. I felt abandoned by my father. I saw my sister addicted to drugs. I was confused. And certainly I could have gone the wrong direction, like my sister, or like many of my friends that I grew up with in the neighborhood. And I thank God for the structure, the dedication, the determination, and discipline that boxing provided me to help me get where I am today. And the other very important figure in my life was Shorty, that giant, who pretty much was like a second father to me and really played a huge role in my life. The other positive thing and experience I had was just here I'm on the U.S. national boxing team. I'm traveling all over the world. I remember getting that Adidas bag with shoes and gear and T-shirts, and it was like heaven when you got that bag. So the honor and prestige that comes along with representing the United States of America. So I had a lot of good experiences. I had a lot of hurt and negative experiences. I had a lot of challenges because of my negative surroundings.
Right.
So all of that required resilience.
And let me, two questions before I leave this part. One is this traveling around that you're doing. Did you feel like a big shot when you got into these other gyms to fight people all over the country?
You know, it felt, it was very special. Sir, when you got that bag and you're representing the United States of America with USA on the back, the national anthem, and we were the best. You know, that was known that USA was the best, so we were something to look up to. So yeah, there was a lot of prestige and honor being part of that experience. You know, the other beautiful experiences that I had with boxing and visiting other countries. So here I am, I was bullied by a Polish kid, and I had my own biases when I went to Poland. And I saw how great the Polish people were, and I met the Polish president, and we had a great time. You know, I remember going to Russia when everybody was saying during the Cold War times, and oh, don't go to Russia, it's terrible, the people are terrible. I remember interacting with the Russians, not understanding each other, but laughing, playing cards, and man, we had a great time together. And then I also saw, you know, we were black, we were white, and we were brown, but we didn't care, man. We supported each other. We were all trying to be champions. So the experiences I had were just absolutely incredible, and again, helped shape who I am today.
And this, that had to be amazing to be going to all these foreign countries while you were, you know, a kid from Milwaukee, you know.
Yeah.
So you, again, getting back to how Jesse robbed you, have you ever gone back to this Polish kid who hit you, who maybe you could look at as the person who gave you the gift of, you know, your boxing career?
You know, and I want to read an excerpt of my book actually, but so I have not seen him probably since I was 15 years old.
Okay.
You know, I beat him up a couple times after I learned how to box. But the more important
Okay.
thing is we became friends.
What
You know,
happened to the Temperance? My
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. But you know, but we became friends. We ended up playing with each other and you know, sports, everything, basketball, baseball. But I have not seen him since I was probably 15 years old.
Okay.
So, but let me read something in my book about Adam. And it's not his real name, but it's the what we call them in my book. But these are Adam's words. We don't
Okay.
want you here. You spick, you N-word. Leave our neighborhood now. Adam's words played a significant role in my story. Those words echoed in my mind long after Adam shouted them. I was inferior. I was deeply disliked. Those words hurt me and they frightened me. Would I have ever become a boxer if Adam had not called me those names? Likely no. Without boxing, what path might my life have taken? Would I have gone in the wrong direction, like so many of my friends and those of similar backgrounds? Hearing those words at 9 years old changed my life. Because of Adam, I learned how to be coached, how to be resolute, how to be a team player. Because of Adam, I rose from the boxing ring to the boardroom. Thank you, Adam. So I would thank Adam. I'd hug him. I'd be very fine with him. It'd be nice to see him.
Nice, nice. I've got a guy in my life like that. His name is Don, and I refer to him as not in a great way, but he had a similar impact on me. Like, he didn't realize it at the time. He was just trying to be a bully, and it worked for a short period of time. But I never forgot what it felt like to be on that side of a bully. And if he hadn't been a bully, I don't think I would have had nearly the career and success that I ended up having. I probably would have just continued working for him if he had been a decent person. So it's amazing how sometimes these people come along who you wish wouldn't, but then later reflecting upon it think, wow, I'm really glad that Adam in your case or Don in my case came along. When did you meet your wife?
So actually, right after I lost in Olympic trials,
Okay.
and one of the church that I ended up going to, because I went there a while ago and I saw these pretty girls. So I said, hey, I'm going to go back there and see if I could find a pretty girl. And actually, the first person I saw was my wife. She was in the choir singing, and I demonstrated some interest through a friend, and she wasn't sure about me. But once she saw that, I was taking church seriously and got to know me a little bit better, then we became friends.
Okay. And did she then become part of this? I mean, she obviously became part of the search because you found her, but this search that you talked about earlier, after having lost this bout and your and ultimately your decision to no longer box, even though you could have turned pro, you could have been making money, you could have, who knows, right? I mean, it could have been the dream.
Yep. So she certainly was a part of my walk with Christ. When I was searching, I made that decision myself after thoughtful prayer and reflection. And I consulted with some people. A good friend of mine, Edwin Aleman, was very close with me, and so I'd say that she wasn't so involved in my discernment process and me giving up the sport. It was more so after that we developed a good relationship, and but from then on, in terms of my walk with Christ, yeah, she played a big role in that. Her family is just a great family, and so her brothers and sisters, I developed a relationship with them. So yeah.
And how long did it take you then to figure out, that you're going to go back to school and you're going to sort of commit yourself to, getting an education that you probably wouldn't have gotten had you, turned pro or even waited to be in the Olympics again? I mean, you would have been, 24 or something at that time. It's tough to go back to school sometimes when you're, at that age.
I always envisioned maybe going back to school. I always thought education was important, and I always knew that boxing was not a long-term sport. So I wanted to get into business and those kinds of things. I had my head, straight when it came to, goals and looking at my future. But when I went back to school, so I knew I had to do something with my life, and I knew I had to go back to school. But so I started off, I took my entrance exam, and I went to a technical college, and I scored embarrassingly low. I had to take basic arithmetic and study courses, and it was embarrassing. And I told the counselor, I said, look, this is crazy. I need to take regular classes. I need to make up for lost time. I have a sense of urgency. She said, well, this is where you test it. This is what you have to do. So I worked my way through that and worked very hard. As I said earlier, I graduated with honors. I got a 3.83 for my master's degree. And I was the only student in my class to publish my thesis in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy. So I worked really hard, and I'm glad that that dedication, determination, and discipline that I learned in boxing, I applied that into my education.
And why occupational therapy, Hector? Why did you, was it
Yeah.
because you
So
were,
first, I wanted to get into physical therapy, but I went to a technical college to get a 2-year degree, but it was a huge waiting list. So I learned it would take more than 4 years. So I said, well, if it's going to take that long, why don't I just get my bachelor's degree? And then I learned about occupational therapy. I had my friend back then, who's now my brother-in-law, suffered a bad car accident and suffered a stroke. And I saw him benefit from occupational therapy. My sister, who experienced addiction and severe persistent mental illness, also benefited from occupational therapy. So then I got interested in that, and it was a good way to help people and a good way to earn a living.
and before I move along, I just wanted to, I guess, go back to your parents and your sister. I mean, we're finding out how your life turned out. How are they doing?
Oh, thank you so much. That's such an important question. So first, my mother is doing well. She's still that humble servant leader. She'll take anybody in her home and feed them, love them, take care of them. Just go stop by and she'll let you come in. That's who she is. My sister is doing great. Ever since my daughter was born, which has been 18 years. She's been stable, going through recovery. I mean, she's had a couple of situations over those 18 years, but for the most part, doing well. And my father, we have a great relationship. In fact, I'm going to be going out there in November. So we had a lot of heart to heart talks, and, I love him. He's a good father, good man, and we've developed a good relationship and have gone through healing over the years. So yeah, I'm actually going out in November, right before Thanksgiving, for a week.
Okay, great. And he's still in Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we've pretty much covered the boxing part. Let's figure our way how we get to the boardroom from here. So, so you graduate with this degree in occupational therapy. Did you use it?
When I graduated, the job market was kind of saturated at the time. What my goal was, I wanted to work in a hospital system, gain some experience, and then have my own business and contract with hospital systems specifically for Spanish-speaking patients.
Okay.
But those jobs weren't available. So then, good thing about occupational therapy is you can work in hospitals, you can work in clinics, you can work in mental health, gerontology, pediatrics. So it's pretty broad based in terms of the opportunities. So, I saw my sister benefit from occupational therapy. So then I did gravitate to mental health. So I started off as a mental health clinician at Wisconsin Correctional Services, which is now called Wisconsin Community Services. But within 3 months, I became the assistant director of that program. And I've pretty much been in management and leadership ever since then. So essentially, all of my career, I've been in leadership roles.
Okay. And you've, before I get into your um, the roles in government that you've had, the leadership roles in government, I guess I want to ask you about servant leadership because you've mentioned it several times now, and especially when you were talking about your mom. So I get what it means. I think you explained pretty well what it means, at least as you're talking about your mom. What about you? What does servant leadership mean? And the reason I want to explore is because it's a term that gets tossed around a lot. Jim Collins probably made it famous in his Good to Great book, and I have my own sort of I don't know. Struggle isn't the right word with it, but I have trouble understanding sometimes what it means when it's applied, when so many people apply it to themselves. What does it actually mean? So, and I guess it always comes down to something, meaning something personal to the person. So I guess that's what I'm asking you, Hector. What does servant leadership mean to you, and why is it important? As opposed to what other kind of leadership is there?
Yep. So great question. So I would attribute it to the personal situations I've had in my life, starting with my mother, where I saw her serve other people, and by her serving other people, it brought out the best in them, including myself. Then I saw my coach Israel Acosta, who spent his nights with me, sacrificed his vacations for me, took me into his own home where he loved me, fed me, and made sure I could be a champion in and out of the ring. So that service I received, I do naturally gravitate towards servant leadership. Here's how I explain it. Servant leadership is about doing what my mom and Shorty did to me, and it's doing that to others. So having a focus on my colleagues, are they appreciated? Are they empowered? Are they recognized? Are they paid commensurate to the value that they provide? If I could stay super focused on them, the way Shorty was super focused on me, I can bring out the champion in them. I can bring out the best in them. And when they are happy and when they are thriving, and then that's going to make me proud, like it made Shorty proud. So it's first that intentional focus in service to others. As it relates to then in my role, I believe in my approach is not a top-down approach. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of ideas, but I want to so if you look at a job description, the CEO is responsible for the vision, the strategy, the direction. But a servant leader approach is to try to co-create that with your team. Not give any directives, but how do you get the buy-in, get the ideas and the insights from others so that you can move forward, not individually, but together. Another big part of servant leadership is stretching beyond the walls of your organization and trying to have a larger impact on the greater society. So those, in a simple way of to make sure that those around you, that their health and well-being are well, because that affects you indirectly, whether you believe in it or not. So that's my simple way of explaining it. There's more formal, they talk about, servant leaders have awareness and empathy and conceptualization and foresight. Those are key principles of servant leadership that I think are important. But sometimes when we explain all that, it just makes it more complicated.
Yeah. Okay. And I feel like, you tell me if you agree with this. I feel like in order to be a servant leader, if I understood you correctly, you have to be really clear on your own personal vision and purpose for the organization. Because if you're not clear on those, your ability, you can get all, I guess my thinking is that if you're not clear on those two things, and maybe others, you can get all wound up in serving others and end up not serving yourself, which it seems like everybody needs you to serve yourself in order for you to serve them.
That's a great point, and something that we stress a lot, and something that servant leaders have to be careful about, because our desire to be like my mom, and sometimes you got to be careful not to burn yourself out.
Right.
You have to take care of yourself. Your internal self needs to be well so that you're able to effectively serve others. So it is something that we talk a lot about, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, improve your health and well-being, because the better you are emotionally, physically, spiritually, the better you're able to have an impact on others.
And as you were moving up through your career, how did working in occupational therapy or as a therapist end up, getting you roles in government? Like you worked for the city of Milwaukee, you worked for the county of Milwaukee, you worked for the state of Wisconsin and WIDA, I believe. So you transitioned at some point, because I didn't hear you talk about the desire to be in government, when you were going through your story so far. So I'm curious what happened there.
Yeah, so I'd say that one thing, my education gave me a good preparation, analytical skills, problem solving, just work ethic, working really hard to achieve the grades that I got. And I applied that into other fields. So yeah, I became a lobbyist for Mayor Barrett. I never lobbied before. In fact, one of the aldermen was upset with the mayor and saying, he told me this is one of the most important positions we have in city government, and I don't think you're qualified. But I worked really hard, and it wasn't that hard for me because, this lobbying was about building relationships and being really passionate about the issues and being able to articulate the case in front of others and bringing people along. So all of that was kind of natural to me, and I had a lot of passion. So I ended up doing really well as a lobbyist. The one really big thing I had was courage, and that was facing your fears. And in a sport of boxing, there's no greater courage than entering into that ring. That fear you feel is absolutely terrible. And I don't care if you're Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, or Héctor Colón, you have fear. But then you have that dedication, that determination, that discipline, and that self-preparedness that gives you the confidence to enter into that ring. So I learned courage in boxing, but I learned that applied into my life. So here I am, low lobbying experience. I had courage to step into that role. Then I get a call from Governor Doyle, to be the director of economic development for WIDA, the second largest bank by way of assets in the state of Wisconsin. I don't have a banking background. I don't have a finance background. I don't have an MBA. I'm an occupational therapist, and yet I'm given this incredible opportunity. But so that courage to step into that role, but then working really hard, surrounding myself with industry experts, with top talent. I learned it's all about your team. What do I know about business finance? I had to surround myself with team, but then I learned the industry. I networked with CEOs, banking executives. I took courses, commercial real estate at UWM and other financial courses so I can understand the industry. But that courage I learned in boxing gave me the courage to step into some of these roles that I was not qualified for. And then that's where that dedication, determination, and discipline I also learned in boxing helped me be successful in those roles.
And so this is amazing. Like this, people should be listening to this. So Hector starts out with a desire to be a professional boxer, or an Olympian at least. Doesn't work out. He chooses to go a different path, goes to occupational therapy for the reasons that he already explained. Then he gets this opportunity to become a lobbyist. He's got a skill set for it, but not an education for it, no experience. He says yes. Then the governor calls and says, I need someone to help us lead, the largest housing. Basically what WIDA does is they help finance all kinds of residential living, right? I got that right?
Yep.
Okay. Does he know anything about that? Does he have a formal education for it? No. But he says yes. And then, this is the next part of it, he gets tapped by the county executive to become the leader of that, I don't know the exact name of it, Hector's Health and Human Services. Now, he does have some background in medicine, mental illness, some other things, but no degree in running that kind of a thing, no experience running that kind of a thing. But he gets asked, and once again, he says, yes. It's almost like 5 different careers from a guy who just, had the grit and the determination and the willingness to accept a challenge.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful, Mayor Barrett, Governor Doyle, and County Executive Chris Abley. And I think of all those opportunities, the one I most treasure and was just a great experience was Director of Health and Human Services, where I was there for 6 years. And while I was there, overseeing a psychiatric hospital, 1,000 staff, $330 million budget, it was really big. And while I was there with my team, we were able to turn multi-million-dollar deficits into multi-million-dollar surpluses, serving people better, paying people more, commensurate to the value they provide. It was an absolutely outstanding experience that helped propel me to the CEO now at LSS.
And that's a story that I don't think ever gets told. Not even your particular story, but just that story about government. Nobody is telling the story about government where someone comes in and reverses a deficit to a surplus, pays people commiserate with their experience. With government, normally it's like, here's what we pay. You either come or you don't. You're coming for the lifetime and employment sort of deal. You're not coming for the other perks, I guess. You don't hear that story very often. You usually hear the story of, whether it's, incompetence, nepotism, just proliferation of what hasn't worked, all of those things. How did you get into, what was the environment like that invited someone like you into it? And then, with the autonomy and the permission to make changes. That's something you don't hear about much.
Yeah, well, I want to say it was extremely, extremely difficult. But County Executive Chris Abley, who's not a politician, who was in there for the right reasons, gave us the ability to do this. So that was an incredible part of this. But we had to work really hard. So in my 6 years, I had to get confirmed by the county board 3 times. The first time, they were threatening not to confirm me because they wanted this other minority candidate, a Black woman, to have the job over me. And Chris Abley picked me over that person. So they said, Chris Abley put you in this negative position, you're not getting confirmed. I did my rounds, I did my convincing, and I ended up getting confirmed like on a 11-4 vote. Then the next time I got confirmed, after I was there for a year, I got unanimous. My third time was like my 5th year into the role, and major transformation happens under my leadership. We close a long-term care institution that was robbing people of their dreams, that we were being sued for because we were institutionalizing people with mental illness. So by closing that long-term care institution, it impacted a lot of union jobs, and they didn't like that. The county board did not like that. Then county executive gives me a $50,000 raise because of market, because of results, and because of retention. But at the same time, the county board, there was legislation that was passed that took away all their benefits and also cut their pay in half. So they lumped that together, and my boss, County Executive Chris Abley, did support that. This is state legislation, but he was vocal about supporting that. And so they would say, this is our only way to get back to Chris Abley. He doesn't respect us.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Hector, you're a nice guy, but this is dirty and this is politics. So I did my round. Here's what the beautiful thing about this. So here I am, 5 years into the job, extraordinary results with my team, and I'm going to be out of a job soon. a lot of people from this community, Republicans and Democrats and white, black, and brown, and people from all across the state, even the nation, were standing up with Hector. There was a whole effort called Stand with Hector. Calls were being made to the county supervisors. The Journal Sentinel endorsement, they wrote a major article about my achievements. I ended up getting confirmed. A month later, I get approached by the chair of LSS for the CEO role. And I decided that it was the right time to have that conversation.
Yeah, I guess at that time you'd be like, okay, so I've been able to navigate my way through this. It sounded like you approached people who were against you or had some problem with you head on. I go talk to them, but they can still grind on you, right? It's like, so there you go. That's leads you to the boardroom.
Yes. So here I am at LSS, and I'm so grateful. So I am the first non-Lutheran, non-pastor, non-Norwegian to run LSS in 139 years. Midway through a 6-month process, I almost withdrew my name, really for fear of rejection. And I would have been a coward. But I'm so glad that I continued through the process. I had some positive vibes from the board chair and the HR consultant. I'm glad I did, because this is where my purpose and calling is. LSS has 800 employees, $60 million budget. Wisconsin and Upper Michigan, we serve a child in crisis who has nowhere to turn, a family in turmoil that might be facing eviction, an elderly person or a person with a disability that needs just a little bit of help to live independently and successfully, or a refugee that's fleeing from war and persecution right now, what we're seeing in Afghanistan. This is an amazing organization serving over 20,000 individuals on an annual basis, 92% of which indicate that we have improved their quality of life. I'm so grateful to boxing through my rise to get here at LSS in the boardroom.
But like all of like your experience at Health and Human Services, Hector, that LSS was, it's probably too strong to call it broken, but it wasn't headed in the right direction when you got there.
Yeah, so before I got here, LSS met 2 budgets in 10 years. And during that period of time, lost over $10 million. So yeah, my first 3 years here, it's been a $12.4 million turnaround, meeting and exceeding budgets every year. This year, I'll probably add on another couple million. And so it's a major turnaround. And I would attribute that first and foremost to the outstanding board that I have assembled since I've been here. New leadership team. We've divested of $13 million worth of programs since I've been here. Nonprofits don't do that because we love people, we want to serve people. It's hard for us to say no. But by doing that, it allowed us to strategically grow essentially by that same amount. So we've grown by 13 million. The organization has never been stronger, certainly in the last 15 years than it is now. Again, serving our staff, the people we serve with high quality outcomes, but also paying our staff commensurate to the value that they provide. Before they weren't getting raises and we didn't have 403B contributions. And now we have all of that and bonuses. And so we're paying our staff a lot more. Our retention of them is much better than when I first started. And we're just getting started.
Well, I love how you brought a business mindset, that's what I call it at least, to this opportunity, because it is a business. It's a very large business, a $60 million business, right? That's a large business. And yet, and so many businesses make this same mistake that you mentioned with nonprofits. You've got divisions, for example, that don't perform, and you want them to perform. It's hard to give up the non-performance, especially if you made the decision to get into it in the first place. I know that's something I struggled with during my career so far. And yet you're not seeing that hanging on to that, while it is benefiting someone, it's not benefiting the whole organization the way it would. And in fact, it's impacting it negatively because you're, you're funding losses, which means you don't have money to pay people. You don't have money to grow. You don't have money to, become better. You can't train. You can't do all of these things, right? And I loved what you did in your book. You talk about the 5 basics, and you basically went into your team and you asked them a series of questions, and then you listened because you felt like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if I am, tell me, but it seemed like you felt like the answers are inside of this group. We just haven't been searching for the answers. We've just been working and doing whatever it is that we've become conditioned to do. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's part of a servant leadership approach as well. So I didn't want to come in with my vision, my strategy, my direction, say go do it. So I did start off with 5 questions. I said, what are the biggest challenges the organization is facing? Why are we facing those challenges? What are some of our opportunities for growth? What do we need to do to leverage those opportunities? And if you were me, what would you focus your attention on? It is the answers and the insights to those questions that transform this organization. We just synthesize those answers and insights, put it into a strategic plan, and move forward.
I think that's that second question. Why are these challenges, or why are we experiencing these challenges? I believe that's a question that often gets missed. What are our challenges? Simple, right? Yeah. Right? Everybody knows what the challenges are, but why are they, or why have they become challenges? That's a really, really insightful question, Hector.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So let's finish up with just a brief run through those other five, yeah. 5 virtues, yeah. And I don't know why you chose the word magnanimity, because I have a hard time saying it, and you don't hear it very often, so it kind of does get your attention that way. Humility, courage, perseverance, and temperance. And why are those things what you've focused on, and why are they important to all of us?
Yeah, so magnanimity, Alexander Havard said this is the virtue of personal excellence. And I learned that virtue in boxing. So in boxing, I believe in order to have that personal excellence, you need daily habits, daily rituals, and daily routines. So in boxing, I would wake up in the morning, work out in the afternoon, work out again in the evening, go to sleep early, wake up early, view tapes. I was doing everything that a champion needed to do, a boxer needed to do in order to become a champion. That implies into life and leadership. And as a CEO, what are your daily habits, daily rituals, and daily routines? And I believe that mind, body, spirit approach is going to help bring out the best in you, that it will allow you to be a magnanimous person and have an impact on those around you that is honorable and remarkable. Humility at its core, it's about serving others. Again, I saw Shorty spend his nights, weekends, took me into his own home, serving me. And so I gravitate that to servant leadership. And when you serve others, you can bring out the best in them. Courage, about facing your fears. I talked a little bit about the no greater courage than entering into that ring, but how that dedication, determination, and discipline gives you the confidence to get into that ring. Same thing in life, dedication, determination, and discipline, that self-preparedness is going to give you confidence to enter into roles that might not feel that safe. And then perseverance is about not giving up. So I lost my first fight and wanted to give up. I lost my second fight, wanted to give up. And Shorty was like, champ, don't be a quitter. Don't be a quitter. You can become a champ. Let's do this, champ. And look at that confidence from him, and got to all the beautiful experiences I received from boxing as a result of not giving up.
Right.
And then temperance, talked about that self-control and restraint. Do not react to a situation that can ruin your life in your career. Temperance is so important. So those are the virtues that I learned in boxing, and I believe they're essential to life and leadership.
And with temperance, one final question. Do you also sort of condition people's thinking about that to don't make it about the person, make it about the situation, or make it about the issue, or make it about where we're trying to go? Because sometimes when you make it about the person, you automatically shut off any progress.
That's a great point. Yep. Deal with it internally. What is the struggle you're facing right then and there? And maybe it is a lack of temperance because somebody
Right.
else upsets you, or, try to focus on yourself. And that's the best way to approach that virtue.
Nice. Well, Hector, this has been a fantastic opportunity for me and for my listeners to get to know you, get to know your journey, your willingness to, grit through things, persevere, your willingness to say yes, and your willingness and ability to get into something and make positive change. That's how you get ahead in this world. Say yes, get in, make positive change, make friends, right? Don't make enemies, make friends. And like you said, empower people to execute on the vision that you create for them as a leader. And they, if you do it right, they do it. And it's amazing. So yeah, congratulations on your success. And this has been such a fun conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. Appreciate it, Mike.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the How'd It Happen podcast, where we believe that success doesn't happen unless you make it happen. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. And while you're there, please rate it and leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show, ideas for future guests, or whatever you'd like to share. And of course, you can always find me at MikeMalatesta.com. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to the How'd It Happen podcast.